Shout. We were only 7 together on a night. Pull up, but we are not 7 with you.
So, BTS, pop music, the Western music industry. They're all kind of related, right? Right. So there's this music docuseries that I found recently on Netflix through the recommendation of a couple of armies on Twitter. It's called This Is Pop. There's something like 8 episodes where it goes through pivotal moments in recent music history, with more focus on the last 30 years. And it explains basically some of the phenomenons in the industry, from the songwriters behind a lot of the pop songs that we grew up with in the 2000s, and how Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake, Backstreet Boys, 98 Degrees, whatever, and how all of those were written by Swedish producers. It talks about Boyz II Men and how they, as Black musical artists, created the template for what boy bands are like today. It talked about music festivals and how hard it was to create a model for music festivals that was, would make money. There was an episode on the political and social commentary that music is and how it can resonate with people and have a emotional, physical, spiritual effect. So it was all of these things, episode by episode, that culminated in this deeper understanding of what it is that I love and gravitate towards in BTS music and why I think they resonate with so many people around the world. So what I want to do is go through these episodes one by one and kind of explain what happened in them, and then analyze how I think whatever's being talked about in that episode applies to BTS, and why I think there's something that we can learn or take away from it, or something that we can predict in the future based on what that episode was about. So I'm gonna be spoiling everything going forward. So if you don't want to have spoilers, I recommend you pause this video and go watch those episodes. But overall, I think that whole series is worth your time, especially if you're an army. So yeah, so go watch that and then come back and talk about these episodes with me. So, first episode. The whole episode focused on Boyz II Men, which, if you don't know, was a Black musical group of 4 members and then eventually 3 who were popular in the late 90s, who basically ended up creating the template for what a boy band should look like, the topics they should cover, and then their template then went on to be the same concept, the same template that was used for Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, 98 Degrees, and basically started a chain reaction of what is the idea of a boy band and that's what's been modified over the years into what we know today, and I would say has ended up partially as what BTS is in one way or another. The episode covers basically their rise to fame, where they came from. They came from Philadelphia. They were really passionate about music, and they ended up going to this music school in Philadelphia, and just naturally came together as a group of men who really liked to sing in harmony, who were really good at it, who just found, a lot of pleasure and passion in doing that. And their love for their art and how much they could perfect what they were doing ended up really resonating with a lot of people, and they became popular. And one of the things that I found interesting is that the people from the group, when they were interviewed and they were talking about why they came together, they just talk about how they had a natural chemistry, how they just fit together. They were equally passionate. They had a dynamic where they just could work together, and I think it came across in what they were doing. And I see a lot of similarities to BTS in this, and how we always comment on the fact that BTS has a lot of chemistry. They're all perfectionists. They're all really hardworking. They all inspire each other over and over again. I think there's definitely something to that, and that there's a stronger bond and motivation that gets formed between people who are artists who are working together, who are all of a similar mind and who feel so strongly about the end product, versus people who get lumped together and they're more like, I don't know, like coworkers, which you hear about in other boy bands, you hear about in other K-pop groups, and that the people in those groups aren't as bonded as you would like them to be, as you see successful groups like BTS being. So I definitely think that that's a crucial piece of the puzzle in terms of becoming successful. One of the other things that I found interesting in this episode is that the Boyz II Men members talked about how, especially in the beginning, there was a lot of controversy surrounding their music and whether it should be categorized as R&B or hip-hop, because they were 4 black men who were singing as like a quartet. So they had a lot of ballads. They had a lot of songs that were slower, softer, had topics that dealt with romance, and were kind of in stark contrast to the hip-hop groups at that time, which were had a lot more profanity, that had a lot more harsh topics and controversial topics. And some of the people that were interviewed in this episode were saying that, like, Boyz II Men were a good alternative for me to be listening to, especially in front of my family, when I would be embarrassed or ashamed to have it be revealed that I was listening to these more hardcore hip-hop groups and the topics that they were covering. Watching this made me just think, like, oh, so the whole topic of genre and how you should classify people into what genres has never gone away. Everybody's always very defensive and territorial about the genre that a music should fall into, when at the end of the day, the people who actually listen to that music aren't technically thinking of what genre it falls under, but more so whether they like it and whether they're happy listening to that music. I don't know. The other thing I will say, though, is that this whole idea of them being an R&B group or a pop group was a question, because they were trying to figure out on what Billboard chart they should be ranking, whether they should be ranking on the R&B one or the pop one, and how, like, they were moved around between it because of whatever Billboard decided at the time. And I was just listening to them talk about this and feeling so much familiarity with those conversations, with those topics, to what we go through now with BTS, and just being like, this shit never goes away. This shit just is always this kind of petty, weird question of genre. I don't know. For those of you who might have seen other videos I've done, I have a love-hate relationship with genre, because I feel like sometimes we categorize music on such a minute level. There's so many sub genres that it drives me fucking nuts, because at some point I personally think it doesn't matter. If you like a song, you like a song. Genre just drives me up the wall sometimes, and like these debates about genre are just fucking annoying. But yeah, I mean, I see similarities to BTS. Are BTS pop? Are they K-pop? Can they be both? Should they be singled out as K-pop? Is that xenophobic? Oh, like on one album they jump around between pop and dance and R&B and hip hop and like a Latin vibe, like that's weird. It gives you whiplash. I still remember those criticisms they got for genre hopping on Map of the Soul 7, and how much it fucking annoyed me that people would criticize that, because it just doesn't seem that big a deal. If you like the song, you like the song. If you don't like it, you don't like it. Move on. You can't get whiplash. I don't know. Anyway, another thing that I find interesting about this episode is that Boyz II Men talk about how hyper aware they were of their audience, and how their audience was both white and black women, young women, and they were hyper aware that they had to balance this fine line in terms of making music that would appeal to both demographics, and that there was a difference in the demographic between black and white women, and how eventually their popularity inspired other groups, other boy groups that were created by other record labels who saw that there was room in the market for this type of music, for this type of concept of a boy band, and how you had 98 Degrees, Backstreet Boys, and NSYNC that were inspired by Boyz II Men, but who were all predominantly white men or white passing men. So because of that, Boyz II Men was very aware that those other white boy band groups would appeal to white young women a lot more and a lot easier. It would be a lot easier for those groups to capture that audience than Boyz II Men. Yeah, it's very interesting it was very interesting to watch this episode because as ARMY, we know that there are a lot of racial undertones and xenophobic undertones and prejudice in the music industry, and how artists are promoted and who gets the spotlight and who gets recognition. The episode ends on where Boyz II Men are today and in how once those other white boy groups came about, they lost a lot of their popularity because they basically lost a huge chunk of their audience. You can feel like this underlying tension in what they're saying, sometimes directly instead of indirectly, where they're saying that they just really didn't get the recognition that they deserved for creating this idea of, hey, you can have a group of men who come together, who sing instead of rap or instead of rock music, they sing ballads and create romantic songs and basically cater to a female audience in a much more gentle and romantic way, which was a departure from the other music that was being made at the time, and how at the end of the day, they created a model, a concept of a boy band that has existed since then and has been modified since then into what we know today. And so learning all this now made me feel kind of frustrated that we seem to be going through the same rodeo with BTS as a Korean boy group that has modified the boy band template into being a group where you don't have to all sing. You could have members in the same group who some can sing, some can rap, some are very good dancers. You can have people with a variety of talents. It doesn't have to be uniform. And when you let all of these people with their unique background and talents and motivations shine, you end up having a group that is made all the better because all of their talents and abilities don't add to each other, they multiply by each other and make the group exponentially better. But yeah, so that's basically it. These were my thoughts for the first episode. If you guys watched the episode, if you had anything else you wanted to say or any feedback, please let me know and maybe we can have a conversation. I'll see you guys next episode.